The man's voice cut through the boarding chaos like a knife. "Just my luck. Stuck next to some ferry the whole way to Ella," he said, loud enough for the rows around us to hear every word. I froze in the aisle, my hand tightening on my carry-on as passengers turned to stare. Liam Carter, 31, a doctor from Chicago heading home to bury the father who had not spoken to him in 9 years, felt the old shame rise like bile. The bully, a thick-necked businessman in a wrinkled suit, smirked and dropped in a 14C, crossing his arms as if the entire cabin now belonged to his opinion. I slid into 14A without a word, heart hammering, the familiar weight of being seen and dismissed settling on my chest. The flight attendant offered a weak smile and moved on. No one spoke up. That silence hurt more than the slur. As the plane taxied, I stared out the window at the gray Chicago tarmac and let my mind drift back to the last time I had faced a room full of judgment. It was my 19th birthday in the small Texas town where I grew up. Dad had found the letter from my high school boyfriend hidden under my mattress. The shouting that night still echoed in my bones. "No son of mine," he had roared, and the door slammed on every future I had imagined. I left for college the next week and never looked back. Until the call 2 days ago. My sister, voice cracking, told me Dad had suffered a massive stroke. "He asked for you, Liam. Please come." So here I was, 30,000 feet above everything I had run from, sitting next to the very kind of man who had made running necessary. Turbulence rattled the cabin. The businessman gripped his armrests and muttered something about weak stomachs. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe through the rising panic. Then the lights flickered. A woman, too, rose back, cried out. Someone shouted for a doctor. The businessman clutched his chest, face turning ashen. Without thinking, I unbuckled and knelt beside him. "I'm a doctor. Let me help." His eyes met mine, wide with sudden fear, the mockery gone. In that moment, the entire cabin watched as I worked, hands steady despite everything. By the time we landed safely in L.A., the man was stable and the passengers were on their feet, clapping. The same man who had insulted me now whispered, "Thank you," voice hoarse. I nodded, throat tight, and stepped into the terminal wondering if respect ever came without first proving you were worth more than the label they pinned on you. The drive to the funeral home felt endless. Palm trees blurred past the rental car window, while memories played like old film reels. I remembered the night I told my mother I was gay. She had cried quietly in the kitchen, then hugged me and said, "We'll figure this out." But Dad's silence had been louder than any scream. For years, I built walls, threw myself into medical school, dated quietly, never brought anyone home. Then came Jake. Kind, steady Jake, who waited tables to pay for art school and somehow saw through every defense I had. We had been together 2 years now, and still I had not introduced him to my family. The guilt sat heavy in my gut as I pulled into the parking lot. My sister Sarah waited outside, eyes red. She hugged me hard. "He's gone, Liam, but he left you a letter." Inside the chapel, the air smelled of lilies and regret. Relatives I barely recognized nodded politely, their eyes flicking away when they thought I wasn't looking. I sat in the front row alone, staring at the closed casket, wondering if the man inside had ever regretted the words he threw at me that birthday night. After the service, Sarah handed me the envelope. I waited until I was back at the hotel to open it. The handwriting was shaky but clear. "Son, I was wrong. I was scared. Come home. Forgive an old fool." Tears blurred the page. I called Jake immediately. "I need you here," I said simply. He booked the next flight without hesitation. That night, I walked the hotel balcony, city lights of L.A. stretching below, and felt something inside me shift. The mocking stranger on the plane had been right about one thing. I was different, but different no longer felt like a curse. It felt like the beginning of something I'd spent years trying to earn. Jake arrived the next morning, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, dark curls still messy from the red eye. He pulled me into a hug right there in the lobby, not caring who saw. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he whispered against my ear. His voice steadied the storm inside me. We drove to the old family house on the outskirts of the city, the one I had not stepped inside since college. Sarah met us at the door, her smile warm but nervous. "Mom's waiting." Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and old would hit me like memory. Mom stood in the kitchen, smaller than I remembered, eyes bright with unshed tears. She looked at Jake, then back at me. "He's welcome here," she said softly. The words cracked something open in my chest. We spent the afternoon sorting through Dad's things. In his desk, I found a shoebox of old photos. One showed me at 10, grinning beside him at a Little League game. Another was torn at the edges, a picture of me and my first boyfriend at prom, hidden beneath bills. Dad had kept it. The discovery left me breathless. Jake sat beside me on the floor, hand on my knee. He was trying, Liam, in his own way. That evening we gathered around the dining table. Sarah's husband brought wine. Stories flowed, some funny, some painful. I told them about the plane, about saving the man who had mocked me. Mom listened, nodding. "Your father would have been proud," she said. Later, alone with Jake on the back porch under a sky full of stars, I finally said the words I had practiced for years. "I want to marry you. When you're ready." He laughed softly, the sound like home. "I've been ready since the day we met." But peace never lasts without challenge. The next morning a lawyer called. Dad's will had conditions. The family business, a small chain of hardware stores, would go to me only if I agreed to run it for at least 2 years. Otherwise, it would be sold and the money split. Sarah looked devastated. "I can't lose this place," she whispered. The weight of old expectations settled on my shoulders again. I had built a life in Chicago, a career saving lives in the ER, a relationship that finally felt real. Returning to Texas meant stepping back into the closet I had fought so hard to leave. Jake saw the conflict in my eyes that night. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you. But don't choose out of guilt." His words stayed with me as I lay awake. The next day, I visited the cemetery alone. Standing at Dad's grave, I spoke the things I never got to say in life. "I forgave you a long time ago. Now I need to forgive myself for running." The wind rustled the leaves overhead like an answer. Back at the house, I found Mom in the garden. She handed me a small key. "Your father kept this for you. It's to a safety deposit box at the bank. He said you'd know what to do with what's inside." Curiosity pulled me downtown the next morning. Inside the box, I found another letter and a stack of documents. The letter read, "I invested in a clinic for kids like you were. LGBTQ Youth Center in Houston. It's yours to run if you want. Or sell it. Your choice, son." The documents showed years of anonymous donations. Tears came fast. Dad had been watching from afar, quietly supporting the very community he once rejected. The realization hit like sunrise after a long night. I drove straight back and told Jake and Sarah everything. "I'm staying," I said, "but not to run the stores. To build something better." Their faces lit with hope. That afternoon, we sketched rough plans on the kitchen table. A community center attached to the hardware chain, offering jobs, counseling, safe space. Jake's artistic, I turned the drawings into something beautiful. For the first time in years, I felt the pieces of my life clicking into place. But old wounds do not heal overnight. That evening an uncle called, voice sharp. "You can't bring that lifestyle into the family business. Think of the customers." The words stung. I hung up and stared at the phone. Jake wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You've already stood up to worse on that plane. This is just another seat you don't have to stay in." His faith gave me strength. I called the uncle back. "The business will reflect who I am. Take it or leave it." Silence. Then a reluctant "we'll see." Small victories. That night, as Jake and I lay in my childhood bed, he traced the scar on my wrist from a long-ago suicide attempt I had never told anyone about. "You survived all of it," he murmured. "Now live it." I held him close and let myself believe it was possible. The weeks that followed blurred into a rhythm of meetings, renovations, and quiet healing. I flew back to Chicago only long enough to resign from the ER with grace and pack what mattered. Jake stayed in Texas, turning the old barn behind the house into a temporary art studio. His paintings began to appear around town, bright abstracts that somehow captured the ache of belonging. Locals started asking questions. Some smiled. Some crossed the street. I learned to walk past both. One afternoon, a teenage boy showed up at the hardware store, hoodie pulled low, eyes darting. "Heard you might understand," he mumbled. His name was Tyler. 15, scared, parents who did not know yet. I sat with him in the back office for 2 hours. When he left, he carried a business card for the youth center we were building and my cell number. Call anytime, I told him. That night, I told Jake about it. Feels like I'm finally doing what Dad wanted, even if he never said it out loud. Jake kissed my temple. You're doing what you needed when you were his age. The center opened its doors on a warm Saturday in late spring. Ribbon cutting, local news, a small crowd. Mom stood beside me, proud tears in her eyes. Sarah brought her kids. Tyler showed up with 2 friends. The applause felt different from the one on the plane. This time it was for all of us. But success draws attention, not all of the kind. A local church group started a petition to block our funding. Signs appeared downtown. Protect our values. I read them on my morning run and felt the old anger rise. Jake found me later, pacing the kitchen. Remember the man on the plane? He said quietly. You save his life anyway. These people are just scared. Give them time. His patience was a mirror I needed. Instead of fighting back in the papers, I invited the pastor to coffee. We sat for 3 hours. He left without signing the petition. Small bridges. One evening, Tyler called in panic. His parents had found out. I drove over immediately. The house was tense, voices raised. I sat with the family until midnight, sharing my own story without sugarcoating the pain. By the time I left, the shouting had softened into questions. Tyler hugged me at the door. Thanks for not leaving me alone. Driving home, I realized the journey was never just mine. It belonged to every kid still hiding. Jake waited up, 2 glasses of iced tea on the porch. You look lighter, he observed. I told him everything. He listened, then pulled me into a slow dance under the porch light. No music needed. This is the life we were meant to build, he whispered. The next morning, I found a letter in the mailbox. From the businessman on the plane. He had tracked me down through the airline. I was wrong about you, it read. Your actions that day changed me. If you ever need anything, I'm here. I folded the paper and slipped it into Dad's old shoebox. Proof that respect could grow from the unlikeliest soil. Work on the center accelerated. We hired counselors, set up scholarship funds, even started an after-school art program led by Jake. The first exhibition night drew families who had never walked through our doors before. I watched parents watch their children laugh and felt the circle closing. Yet one shadow remained. My uncle still refused to speak to me. At the annual family reunion, he sat across the picnic table, jaw tight. Finally, I walked over. I love this family, I said, but I won't shrink to fit it. He stared at me a long moment, then nodded once. Guess I have to get used to that. It was not forgiveness, but it was a start. That night, Jake and I drove to the beach, the same one from our first trip together years ago. Waves crashed under a full moon. He dropped to one knee in the sand. Marry me, Liam Carter. The ring was simple, silver with a small compass inside. So you never lose your way again. I said yes before the question finished. We laughed and cried and held each other until the tide touched our feet. The next weeks were a whirlwind of planning. Small wedding, backyard, close friends and family who chose to show up. Mom baked the cake. Sarah walked me down the aisle. Tyler and his parents sat in the front row. When Jake and I exchanged vows, the sun was setting, painting everything gold. I choose you every day, I told him. The good, the hard, the real. His answer was a kiss that tasted like salt and promise. Life settled into a new normal after the honeymoon in Big Sur. I ran the center full-time. Jake's art gained local fame. We bought the old house outright and filled it with light. Yet growth always demands another test. One morning a call came from the hospital. Mom had fallen, broken hip. The surgery went well, but recovery would be long. I moved her into the guest room and became her nurse, doctor, and son all at once. Late nights, sitting by her bed, she told stories about Dad I had never heard. How he cried the night I left. How he kept every report card. He loved you, she said. He just didn't know how to say it right. Those conversations healed places I thought were scarred forever. Jake brought coffee and quiet strength. One evening, Mom took his hand. Thank you for loving my boy when I couldn't be there. Jake's eyes glistened. He makes it easy. The center continued to grow. We added a medical clinic wing. I volunteered shifts, treating everything from flu to first heartbreaks. Tyler started volunteering too, helping younger kids. Watching him stand taller each week reminded me why I stayed. The businessman from the plane even donated equipment. Life, it seemed, had a way of circling back with second chances. Autumn brought cooler nights and the first real test of our marriage. Jake's mother fell ill in New York. He flew east for 2 weeks, leaving the house quiet. I filled the silence with work and worry. Calls every night helped, but the distance stretched us. One evening, Tyler showed up with pizza. "You look like you need a friend," he said. We sat on the porch talking about everything and nothing. He told me he had come out to the whole school. "Scared as hell, but I did it because of you." His courage made me proud in a way nothing else had. When Jake returned, he brought news. His mother wanted to move closer. "She likes the idea of Texas, son," he said with a grin. We turned the barn into a mother-in-law suite. The project bonded us again. Watching him paint the walls, I realized love was not the absence of strain, but the choice to lean in any way. The center hosted its first Pride event that December. Small but fierce. Rainbow flags fluttered over the parking lot. Families came, some hesitant, some beaming. I gave a short speech about the man on the plane, about how one moment of cruelty had led me home. Applause rose, but the best part was seeing Mom in the front row, cane in hand, clapping hardest. Afterward, Tyler introduced me to his boyfriend. Young love, awkward and sweet. I shook the boy's hand and remembered my own nervous first dates. "Take care of each other," I told them. Holidays arrived with turkey and arguments over football. Uncle showed up for Christmas dinner. He brought a bottle of good scotch and a gruff Merry Christmas. We drank in silence at first, then slowly talked about the stores. He admitted business was down. "Maybe your ideas aren't so crazy after all." Progress. Jake and I stole a quiet moment under the mistletoe. "Best gift is you," he murmured. New Year's Eve we stood on the roof watching fireworks. "To the life we chose," I toasted. The year that followed brought deeper roots. The center expanded to 2 more locations. Funding poured in from unexpected donors, including the businessman who now called me friend. Jake's art was featured in a gallery in Austin. I flew up for the opening, proud enough to burst. On the drive back, he rested his head on my shoulder. "Remember when you thought you had to choose between family and me?" I laughed. Turns out I could have both. But life rarely lets you coast. Spring brought a crisis. A fire at one of the hardware stores. No one hurt, but damage was extensive. Insurance fought us. For weeks I worked 16-hour days, coordinating repairs and reassuring employees. Jake cooked meals I barely touched. One night, I broke down in the kitchen. What if I fail them all? He held me. "You've never failed the people who matter. Not on that plane, not here." His words anchored me. We rebuilt stronger, with better safety features and a new community room. The grand reopening drew even bigger crowds. Mom cut the ribbon this time. Her smile was the brightest light in the room. Summer heat brought visitors. Jake's mother arrived, frail but feisty. She fit into our life like she had always belonged. Evenings on the porch became storytelling time. She told tales of Jake as a boy, painting on walls with crayons. I shared stories of my own stubborn childhood. Laughter healed old gaps. One afternoon, Tyler graduated high school. We threw him a party at the center. He hugged me hard. "You showed me it's okay to be me." Watching him walk across the stage, I felt the full circle. The boy I once was had helped raise this one. That night, Jake and I lay in bed talking about the future. "Kids?" he asked softly. We had discussed it before. Adoption, surrogacy, the long road. "Yes," I said. "When we're ready." The decision felt right, like another door opening. Fall brought elections and new fears. Anti-LGBT legislation loomed. The center became a hub for information and support. I spoke at rallies, voice steady even when my hands shook. Jake stood beside me every time. "We're in this together," he reminded me. One rally ended with a counter-protest. Signs waved. Voices rose. For a moment, I flashed back to the plane, to the silence that followed the slur. Then Tyler stepped forward with a group of teens. They started singing. Voices joined. The tension broke. People listened. Small change, but change. Winter arrived with the first snow Texas had seen in years. The center hosted a holiday toy drive. Families lined up. I watched a father help his son pick a gift, and felt Dad's presence somehow. On Christmas Eve, Jake gave me a small box. Inside was a key to a cabin in the mountains. Our first family vacation, he said. Just us for now. We drove up after the New Year. Snow blanketed the pines. Nights by the fire, days hiking. One morning we stood on a ridge watching the sun rise. I never imagined this life, I admitted. Jake squeezed my hand. You built it, Liam. Every hard choice. Back home, the rhythm continued. Work, love, community. But another test waited. Mom's health declined again. This time the doctors were less hopeful. I sat with her through long afternoons, reading her favorite books. She told me she was proud. You became the man I always knew you could be. The words carried me through the grief when she passed peacefully 2 months later. The funeral was quiet, family only. Jake held my hand the entire time. At the graveside, I placed a rainbow pin on her casket. Thank you for choosing love, I whispered. Life moved forward as it always does. The center thrived. Tyler started college with a scholarship we funded. Jake's art sold nationally. We began the adoption process, nervous but hopeful. One evening, a letter arrived from the businessman. He had started a support group in his own company. You inspired me, it read. I smiled and pinned it to the bulletin board at the center. Proof that one plane ride could ripple outward forever. Our wedding anniversary fell on a perfect spring day. We renewed our vows in the backyard with close friends. Tyler officiated, voice cracking with emotion. When Jake slipped the compass ring back on my finger, I felt the full weight of the journey. From mock stranger to respected husband, son, brother, mentor. The path had been long, but every step had led here. The adoption agency called on a rainy Tuesday. We have a match. Our heart stopped. A 6-year-old boy named Mateo, quiet, artistic, recently lost his parents in an accident. We drove to meet him the next day. He sat in the playroom, drawing airplanes. When he looked up, his eyes held the same wariness I once carried. Hi, I said softly. We like planes too. Over the following weeks, visits turned into overnights. Mateo warmed slowly, drawn to Jake's paints and my stories about saving people on flights. One night, he crawled into my lap. Can I stay? The question cracked us open. Paperwork flew. Court dates loomed. Through it all, the center kept running. Tyler took on more responsibility, training new volunteers. The business expanded too, adding inclusive hiring policies that drew younger customers. Uncle finally came around, shaking my hand at a board meeting. Never thought I'd see the day, he muttered. But pride shone in his eyes. Mateo's adoption finalized on a sunny Friday in June. We brought him home to balloons and a room painted with stars. That first night, he asked for a bedtime story. I told him about the man on the plane who learned to see differently. He fell asleep holding my hand. Parenthood changed everything. Diapers, tantrums, first days of school. Jake and I learned patience we never knew we had. Mateo flourished, his drawings covering the fridge. One drawing showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow plane. That's us flying home, he explained. The image stayed on my desk at the center. Reminders of why we fought. Challenges came, of course. School playground teasing. A teacher who didn't understand. Each time we showed up, calm and firm. He has 2 dads who love him, we explained. Slowly, the community adjusted. Tyler became Mateo's big brother figure, taking him to art classes. Life felt complete. Then came the call that tested us again. Jake's gallery in New York wanted a solo show. It meant 3 months away. We talked late into the night. Go, I said. We'll visit every weekend. The separation stretched us, but calls and video stories kept the bond strong. Mateo drew planes every day, counting down the visits. When Jake returned, the house felt whole again. His show had been a success. Reviews praising the themes of journey and belonging. One reviewer even mentioned the quiet strength of chosen family. We framed the article. Summer brought the center's 5th anniversary gala. Hundreds attended. I stood on stage, Mateo's hand in mine, Jake beside me. 5 years ago, I was just a man on a plane trying to get home, I told the crowd. Today, I'm a husband, a father, and someone who finally understands home is what we build together. Applause thundered. Later, Tyler pulled me aside. You saved more than that guy's life that day. You saved mine too. His words landed deep. The gala raised enough to open another center in Houston. Dad's original investment had multiplied in ways he could never have dreamed. Fall brought Mateo's first school play. He played a pilot. We sat in the front row, proud tears flowing. Afterward, he ran to us. Did I fly good? Perfect, Jake said, lifting him high. That Christmas, we traveled to New York to see Jake's mother. She doted on Mateo, teaching him card tricks. Watching them together healed old family fractures. Back home, we planted a tree in the backyard in Mom's memory. Mateo helped dig the hole. So she can watch us grow, he said solemnly. The simplicity of his faith reminded me daily of what mattered. The following spring brought unexpected news. The businessman from the plane wanted a partner on a national program for LGBTQ youth employment. We met in Chicago, the same city where the flight had started. Over coffee, he admitted, I was scared of what I didn't understand. You showed me courage. The partnership launched that summer with job fairs and mentorship. Lives changed. Mine had come full circle. One quiet evening, Jake and I sat on the porch watching Mateo chase fireflies. Remember when you thought you had to choose? He asked. I laughed softly. Turns out choosing love was the only choice that ever mattered. He took my hand. The compass ring caught the porch light. Home. Finally and completely. Years slipped by in a gentle way good lives do. Mateo turned 12, tall and thoughtful, already talking about becoming a pilot. The centers dotted 3 states, each one a beacon for kids who once felt alone. Tyler graduated college and took over daily operations, freeing me to focus on family. Jake's art filled galleries across the country, yet he still painted at home every Sunday, Mateo at his side. One afternoon, a familiar face appeared at the main center. The businessman, older now, gray at the temples. He carried a check for a new wing. For the kid I almost became, he said quietly. We shook hands like old friends. That night, I told Mateo the full story of the plane. He listened wide-eyed. You saved him even after he was mean? Especially then, I answered. Kindness is the real rescue. He nodded, filing the lesson away. Our family grew again when we fostered a teenage girl named Rosa. Shy at first, she bloomed under Jake's gentle encouragement and Mateo's big brother energy. Watching our children find their voices filled spaces I never knew were empty. Challenges still arrived. A funding cut threatened one center. Community rallies saved it. A health scare for Jake turned out minor, but reminded us time was precious. Through every storm, we chose each other. On our 10th anniversary, we returned to the beach where he proposed. Mateo and Rosa built sandcastles nearby. Jake slipped the compass ring off, then back on. Still pointing true north, he said. I kissed him, the ocean singing approval. Back home, I stood in Dad's old office, now my study. The letters and photos still lived in the shoebox. I added a new one, our family at the beach. The circle felt complete. One crisp autumn morning, I received a call from the airline. They wanted to honor me at a safety event. I almost declined, but Jake urged me to go. Finish the story, he said. So I flew the same route, Chicago to LA. This time the cabin was full of colleagues and press. When they asked me to speak, I told the truth. That flight didn't just save one life. It saved mine too. It brought me home to the man I love, the children we raise, and the community we build. The applause rose, but the best part came afterward. A young flight attendant pulled me aside. I'm gay, he whispered. Hearing you today gave me courage. I gave him my card. Call if you ever need to talk. The plane landed in L.A. Jake waited at the gate with the kids. Mateo held a handmade sign. Welcome home, Dad. Rosa hugged me tight. We drove home, singing along to the radio. That evening on the porch, I looked at the life we had built. From mocked passenger to respected father and husband. The journey had been long, winding through prejudice, loss, love, and forgiveness. Yet every step had been worth it. Jake joined me, handing me a glass of tea. Proud of you, he said simply. I leaned into him. Proud of us. The stars came out one by one. Somewhere in the distance, an airplane hummed across the sky. I smiled, knowing exactly where I belonged. True or false? Respect should only be given after someone proves their worth through heroic actions.